Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. We are from third group. Okay, let me introduce myself and my partners. I'm Sri Linda Stuti and my partners are Afifah Stiasi, Cici Fariha, Balkis Azahra, and Anita Lutfia. Okay, in this nice occasion, we will talk about designing classroom language tests as our material of presentation. And for the next slide, I will explain. I will continue my presentation. The outline of this presentation: test type, some practical steps to test construction, scoring, grading, and giving feedback. Okay, types based on specific purpose. First, proficiency test. The purpose of proficiency tests is to test global competence in a language. Proficiency tests have traditionally consisted of standardized multiple choices item on grammar, vocabulary, reading comprehension, and listening comprehension. One of standardized proficiency tests is TOEFL, and then diagnostic test. Diagnostic test is used to identify students' strengths and weaknesses. Another purpose is to diagnose specific aspect of language, a test in pronunciation, for example. And then placement test. The purpose of placement test is to place a student into a particular level or section of language curriculum or school. Placement tests come in many varieties: assessing comprehension and production, responding through written and oral performance, multiple choice, and gap filling format. And then achievement tests. The purpose of achievement tests is to determine whether course objectives have been met with skills accurate by the end of period of instruction. For the last, language aptitude test. The purpose of language aptitude test is to predict a person's success to exposure to the foreign language.
Alright, my name is Cici Fariha and I will explain slide 5. Test type based on response. There are two test types based on response. The first is objective test and the second is subjective test. The first one is objective test. Objective test is a test in which learner ability or performance are measured using specific set of answer. Means there are only two possible answer, right and wrong. In other words, the score is according to the right answer. Type of objective tests include multiple choice tests, true or false tests, matching, and problem-based questions. And the second is subjective test. Subjective test is a test in which the learner ability or performance are judged by examiner opinion and judgment. For example, easy and short answer. Alright, the next slide is test type based on orientation and the way to test. Language testing is divided into two types based on the orientation. There are language competence tests and performance language tests. Language competence test is a test that involves competence of language such as vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation, while performance test is tests that involve the basic skill in English. There are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And then there are two kinds of competence tests and performance tests. There are direct and indirect. The first is direct competence test. Direct competence test is a test that focuses on measuring student knowledge about language competence like grammar or vocabulary, in which the elucidation use one of the basic skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The second is indirect competence test. The direct competence test is a test that focuses on measuring student knowledge about language competence like grammar or vocabulary, in which the elucidation does not use one of the skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And the second is performance test. Direct performance test is test that focus on measuring student skill in about listening, speaking, reading, and writing, while the elucidation is through direct communication. And the second is indirect performance test. The indirect performance test is a test that focuses on measuring student skill in about listening, speaking, reading, and writing, that the elucidation does not use the basic skill.
Hello everyone, I am Afifa Setiasi and I would like to explain about test types based on score interpretation. There are two kinds of tests based on score interpretation. They are norm reference test and criterion reference test. The first, norm reference test. According to Stiggins 1994, norm reference tests are designed to highlight achievement differences between and among students to produce a dependable rank order to students across a continuum of achievement, from high achievers to low achievers. The content selected in norm reference test is chosen by how well it discriminates among students. A student's performance on a norm reference test is interpreted in relation to the performance of a large group of similar students who took the test when it was first normed. For example, if a student receives a percentile rank score on the total test of 34, this means that he or she performed as well or better than 34% of the students in the norm group. This type of information can be useful for deciding whether or not students need remedial assistance or is indicate for a gift program. However, the score gives little information about what the student actually knows or can do. The second is criterion reference test. According to Anastasi, 1988, criterion reference tests determined what test takers can do and what they know, not how they compare to others. The content selected for the criterion standard test is selected on the basis of its significance in the curriculum. Criterion reference tests give detailed information about how well a student has performed on each of the educational goals or outcomes included on that test. Some practical steps to test construction. The first, assessing clear, unambiguous objectives. Selected objectives for a unit in a low intermediate integrated skills course. Form focus objectives, listening and speaking. Students will, number 1, recognize and produce tag questions with correct grammatical form and final intonation patterns in simple social conversation. Number 2, recognize and produce WH information questions with correct final intonation patterns. Communication skills, speaking. Student will, number 1, State complete action and events in a social conversation. Number 2, ask for confirmation in a social conversation. Number 3, give opinions about an event in a social conversation. The last, produce language with contextually appropriate intonation, stress, and rhythm. Reading skills. Simple essay or story. Students will recognize irregular past tense or selected verbs in a story or essay. Writing skills. Simple essays or story. Students will write a one-paragraph story about a simple event in the past. The last, use conjunctions so and because in a statement of opinion.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bagas Azahra, and now I will explain drawing a test specification. The specification for classroom use can be a simple and practical outline of your test for large-scale standardized tests that are intended to be widely distributed and therefore are broadly generalized. The specifications are much formal and detailed. For class use tests, your specification will only comprise your specification will simply comprise a board outline, B, what skills you will test, C, what the items will look like. Next, devising test task. Devising test tasks or writing test items in the central part of test construction. Here you have to express and write what your student have to do, show what ability or competence you want to see. It discusses some important factors to consider in order to choose tasks for planning or designing tests. But before writing, you have to writing your first draft to ask or type or test item and ask yourself some important question. For example, like, is the difficulty of each item appropriate for your students? Is the language of each item sufficiently authentic? Do the sum of the items and the test as a whole adequately reflects the learning objective? And after answering this question, when you find answer no, you need to revise or improve your test again. And next, designing multiple choice test item. A multiple choice item consists of a problem, known as the STEM, and the list of suggested solutions, known as alternatives. The alternatives consist of one correct or best alternative, which is the answer, and incorrect or inferior alternatives, known as distractors. And 1. Design each item to measure a specific objective. 2. State both STEM and option as simply and directly as possible. 3. Make certain that the intended answer is clearly the only correct one. And 4. Use item indicates to accept, discard, or revise items. Okay, thank you. Next will be explained by Anita.
Item indices to accept, discard, or revise items. 1. Item facility, or if, is the extent to which an item is easy or difficult for the purpose group of test takers. 2. Item discrimination, or ID, is the extent to which an item differentiates between high and low ability test takers. 3. Distractor efficiency is one more important measure of multiple choice items value in a test, and one that is related to item discrimination. Scoring, grading, and giving feedback. 1. Scoring. Your scoring plan reflects the relative weight that you place on each section and items in each section. 2. Grading. Your first thought might be that assigning grades to student performance on this test would be easy. Just give an A for 90, 100%, a B for 80, 89%, and so on. And the last one, giving feedback.
Okay, the conclusion of our presentation today is, in this chapter, guidelines and tools were provided to enable you to address the 5 questions posed at outset: how to determine the purpose of criterion of the test, how to state objective, how to design specification, how to select and arrange test tasks, and how to ensure appropriate watchback to the student. This 5-part template can serve as pattern as you design classroom tests. Thank you for your attention and participation. And wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.